This is my final project, my little word cloud. First of all, two of the theorists that I connected the most with were Jane Nelson and Linda Albert. They both have a lot of similar beliefs. Jane Nelson talks about positive discipline and Linda Albert talks about cooperative discipline. But they both say that there's 4 reasons for student misbehavior: attention, power, revenge, and assumed inadequacy. And so I kind of based my philosophy off of how we can overcome these 4 reasons for student misbehavior. And I really do believe that the number one preventer of student misbehavior is having a positive, trusting relationship with the student, between the teacher and student. And so it's a medium teacher control approach, and with overcoming the need for attention, that relationship really helps students feel like they are loved and cared about, and it's important. It's an expectation and a role of the teacher to care about the student and to really focus and be genuine on their needs. As far as overcoming student need for power, a lot of my classroom is founded on democratic principles that help students have choice and student leadership, class jobs, and self-governing behaviors, and these things help students feel like they are empowered. As far as inadequacy, it's important that teachers have high expectations for students and help them rise to those expectations, and so helping students see that they are capable of more than they even believe that they are. And that's one of the teacher roles, is to have high expectations for students. And because the teacher has high expectations for the students, a lot of responsibility is placed on the students to make decisions and to solve problems. I wrote here, it is essential to have a strong teacher-student relationship that is built on trust and respect. A teacher must always have the student's best interest in mind. And students need to feel like teachers have their best interest in mind. When students feel like teachers care about them, then they'll understand that everything that the teacher does and expects of them is based off of a desire to help the student succeed. I feel like the things that I wrote about the democratic classroom really played into my philosophy. There are class jobs, so that the class has responsibility, so that the students are really playing an important role in their classroom and take responsibility over their own learning. Student voice is really important, and this can be done through class meetings, as well as a suggestion box in the classroom that students can put in their concerns that they might have, and then those things will be discussed in meetings. Student choice is really important. I think it's important to allow students to make as many choices as possible about what they learn and how they learn it. I think giving them a list of topics that they can choose from and a list of ideas of ways that they can learn about those things. They can, if we're learning about weather, they can choose what type of weather they want to study and how they want to study it. If they want to make a PowerPoint, if they want to make a dance, if they want to write a report. Really just giving them as many choices as possible so that they have that power in their lives. Self-governing behaviors. This can be seen through self-assessment tools. I think it's really important that students can assess their own learning so that they feel more of a responsibility over their learning and take the initiative with their learning as well. Student leadership will be in the classroom through rotating the class jobs as well as the class meetings of who leads those, and morning meetings as well. Motivation is a really essential part of my philosophy, and I believe that students are expected to be intrinsically motivated to learn. And as a teacher, it's an expectation that the teacher helps the students learn how to be intrinsically motivated, because it won't come naturally for a lot of students. The teacher has the responsibility of moving them from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation. And these are just ways that teachers can do this, can help students be intrinsically motivated. Some of them include just really focusing on learning as the motivation in all that they do in the classroom. And so at the very beginning of the day, talking about learning and getting the students excited to learn, asking students what they want to learn, and focusing on the fact that you're at school to learn. That's the reason that we come. and all of the assignments are to learn, and just really focusing on that rather than extrinsic motivation. Another way we can do this is we can still do class parties with pizza and treats, but the motivation isn't, oh, we're going to get pizza. The motivation would be trying to focus on learning again. So making it a celebration of learning and all about learning. And we get to have this party because you learned, and learning is the focus. Same thing with talking about a lot of satisfaction of learning. Sitting with students and asking them how it feels when they do learn something new. I think in my classroom it's just focused on helping the students learn to love learning. And we can do this through journals, having the students write down how it feels to struggle in learning, questions that they have, and then goals about learning, what they want to learn, what they love learning about, what they don't love learning about, and then how it feels after they do learn something new, so that students really become learners. And the last thing that I talked about was, two more things, focusing on natural consequences. That's something that Linda Albert and Jane Nelson talk a lot about, is natural consequences, and that it's really important to make those a part of the discipline, which natural consequences will help students become more intrinsically motivated. And then last is relevance. I think it's important that students can feel like everything that they're learning is really relevant to them, and obviously no one wants to spend their time learning something that doesn't apply to them. And the same thing goes for kids as well. And so helping them see why we're teaching everything we are and how it will apply to them. So for class rules, I talked about how students will help establish the rules at the beginning of the class, so that they can really have student voice in what expectations are there in the classroom for them, and so that they can understand the rules and why they're in place. Some examples might be cooperative or be respectful. And I believe that every time you discipline a student, it's important to tie it back to these rules so that they understand that that everything that you expect of them is from one of these rules that they helped establish. Consequences might be a verbal warning, reminding a student, I noticed that you were talking during instruction, that's not respectful. We need to be respectful in this class. And then another example of a consequence might be pulling them aside after class and having a private discussion with them. I talked about establishing positive rapport with the students, and two ways I'm going to do that is through the democracy as well and kindness. Here, Linda Albert talks about how when we discipline, it's important to discipline with firmness and kindness, and I believe that that is absolutely true, and that your example of kindness will be an example to the students as well. Here are class procedures. Those are important. And the reason procedures are important is because these things will be consistent throughout the year. It'll set, again, consistency and expectations. And the way I'll maintain those procedures is that if students fail to do them correctly the first time, we'll always take time to retry. And then these are my intervention methods. And a lot of them are just the things that we talked about in class. But again, going back to intrinsic motivation, it's really important that most of my interventions are focused on natural consequences, like Linda Albert and Jane Nelson talk about. The most important is about bullying. That bullying will be addressed through class meetings. This goes back to having that strong relationship as a class and also student voice. Here is the class map. Here we'll have our class meetings. It's a circle so that everyone can be seen and heard. Here is our wall of class pictures so that we can really feel like a family. And here the students will be working in a lot of groups to establish that relationship with each other. And those are my resources.